I've started a second channel for my Geometry Dash completions, and I am part of the official GDDP leaderboard. Link in the description if you're interested. That was a nice break. How's it going? It's me, Logan ISL, back from my long-established break. However, breaks had to end at one point or another, and it's time for me to come back strong with another installment of JToH Flawed, the only series that unites a whole bunch of 13-year-olds to lose their shit in JToH discussion after it releases. In this series, we take a look at a specific issue and look at the history behind it, where it is now, and how it can be fixed. Right now is an interesting time for JToH. Paradise Atoll just released, giving us the 200 tower barrier. Zone 5's lobby is also finished, and bug testing seems to be the last thing remaining, as well as the end of the 2021 development cycle. Today we're going to talk about the very thing that ends the development cycle every year, the event season. More specifically, events in general. For those of you who do not know, there are two events at the end of the year, those being the Halloween and Christmas events. In these events, there are multiple steeples and a boss fight that need to be completed. Doing so will award you exclusive items, but sometimes those items can prove to be insanely useful for everyday play, and some are just dumb. Basically, this is JToH's exclusive content that is only around for a couple months. Yes, I know that's not true, but I'll get to that later. Events have been around since October 2018, pretty much going back all the way to the beginning of JToH itself. In 2019, there were two extra events which I'll get into later. With the background out of the way, let's go ahead and get this started. The story starts when this picture was released to the public sometime in September 2018. This showed early terrain for what would be the game's very first event. People commonly had a misconception that this was Ring 9. The event would come out in around mid-October, along with the release of Ring 3. Wait a minute. Hey, do you remember this clip in my Before the Rings video? Making it to the end would put you into this room with this mysterious portal. We will talk more about this mysterious portal in part 2. First of all, the steeples inside were actually called towers, even though they were only 5 floors each, as steeple had not been an official name yet. To make matters worse, there were actually no difficulties assigned to each of the towers. Instead, they put random colors on the portal. This confused many people. But there were 3 different steeples. And the catch, you only had 20 minutes to complete each of the 3 steeples inside the event. But also, events for this item were allowed, even boost items, so therefore you could use a coil to go ahead and complete this event, like I did. After doing the 3 steeples, you would have to find a secret portal to be teleported into the Slammo's pocket dimension, and there, you would have to do a final challenge. In typical JToH era fashion, there was a catastrophic bug where there was an X pusher that was completely impossible to do. Because of this, you actually had to do a cheat on purpose to be able to complete the event. After doing so, you'll be confronted with the Slammo boss fight. In this boss, you had to avoid all projectiles heading towards you, and you had to circle around the arena to hit the various laser buttons. There were 2 different phases to this boss, and if you failed the obby or the boss, you had to do all the steeples all over again. Yep. You had to restart the entire event. Dying on the steeples as well, or taking too much time, you'd have to restart as well. But however, the most annoying attack for the Janitor of Hell was surely the meteor attack. Meteors would come from above and with no warning hit you and just tank your damage. When I attempted to beat this boss, I actually killed this boss, then a meteor spawned from earlier, came down on me and killed me. So I had to do the event again. Fun! Those who were able to pass the annoying and frustrating attacks would be granted a badge for defeating the Janitor of Hell. Only 83 people were able to beat the game's first ever event. An unknown developer or staff member gave themselves the badge sometime in 2020, making the count at 84. But someone else also somehow gave themselves the badge recently, and now the current count is up to 85. But nonetheless, even with coils allowed, only 83 people were able to beat the event. The award? The Bootleg Ghost Coil, the game's most powerful coil besides Blessed. This is the best previously obtainable coil in the game, and only a few select players left from that era still play the game haven't. For a couple days after the release though, the Ghost Coil wasn't coded into the boost barriers, so people like myself kept beating Tower of Confusion until it was patched. I actually got to beat it 8 times with the Ghost Coil. Christmas 2018, let's just say, is the most interesting event. This event introduced the first gameplay outside of the event areas. There were 2 presents hidden in Ring 1 that moved around that included a spawn on top of Tower of True Skill. That is not a joke. That is when there were only a few victors. There is also a special developer-only present as well. This time we saw the conventional 3 steeples and a boss fight. This time, actually named Steeples. No time limit this time. In late 2018, however, Item Clip was discovered, and conveniently during the Christmas event people started using it as items were allowed in this event again. The thing is, you got a key for completing each of the steeples, and there was nothing guarding the boss entrance other than those keys. So, you can just item clip through and get to the boss. The boss itself was multiplayer and was the first to do so, and you needed multiple people to go for the boss at once. To make matters worse, progress did not save, so you had to beat the event every time you joined the server, and a lot of the time, nobody was on your server that had access to the boss until people started item clipping, of course. The boss itself is very easy, but with that difficulty came a problem. There were 2 drops the boss had. A drop for defeating the boss, but a second one that was a 10% chance to get. So yeah, you had to do this boss multiple times. Fortunately, you could actually buy the presents for Christmas 2018, so that is what many did. The way the Christmas events worked was that you obtained presents, which upon the items were finished, would open up into actual items. 297 got the rare drop from the boss legitimately, but many others bought the present itself. That present gifted the bootleg Winter Coil. This item was a huge controversy. It was initially 12.5% more powerful than the Ghost Coil upon its release. It wasn't added to the boost berries again, so people were able to beat TOC with it a little bit. The Winter Coil itself, however, got nerfed many times. This caused a lot of controversy, because people who spent the 799 Robux complained that it should be better than the Ghost Coil, while Ghost owners thought Ghost Coil should be better because only 83 had it compared to the hundreds that had Winter. In the end, the Winter Coil did get nerfed down, but is very rare to find today. This event would also give 4 other items. The item that you got for completing the boss would turn into the Sprite Cranberry, which is probably the rarest healing item that you can find today. There is also the T and Y letters, as well as... I am not sorry if you find me in-game and I use that. That is my toy. In 2019, the community saw 4 events that year. Yes, 4. The first one was Spring 2019, the only spring event to ever occur. This was the very first event that happened in JToH itself rather than KToH. This time, however, the steeples actually had their difficulties put on them, but there was no chart, and items were disabled, and no items have ever been allowed in events from here on out. There isn't much to talk about here other than a funny story. You see, one of the KToH memes was "it egg." I don't know why it came to be, but everyone called it near it egg, and it made him mad. So what did 60mm and Goose do in their Easter steeple about egg hunting? Put in it egg, of course. At this time, Itnir was away from the community and slowing down. So when he did the event and saw that egg, he literally said, "I've lost all hope in this community." After doing all the steeples, you had to do a tsunami escape. You had to find multiple items scattered on the island and get to the escape portal. After finding all the items, and hopefully not dying to the tsunami, you would complete the Spring 2019 event. I am not sure if he died on the tsunami if he had to restart the event or not, but I would assume he had to do the event again. An astonishing 1,361 people were able to get the E letter, grass, which is known to be one of the best healing items in the game, and that really annoying Y. Back then, there was no Peter Griffin or explosion if you tried an item clip. Instead, there was a script on each individual item that would go ahead and prevent you from doing so. Unfortunately, they did not put that script on the Y, so for a couple days, you were able to do a massive tower of Inception cheese, which pretty much made the tower trivial. This was one of the many ways that Inception has been cheesed in the past. Next up was the Halloween 2019 event. This was the first time a conventional Halloween event took place. Like normal, there were 3 different steeples you had to complete. For the first time as well, the steeples were placed on a difficulty chart. However, these steeples got pretty hard. The hardest one was intense difficulty, so this event was not for the faint of heart. But due to the high difficulty, the steeples pretty much had to get nerfed multiple times during the event. To make matters worse, progress on the steeples was supposed to save. However, they never got the save files working until nearly the end of the event. So you had to beat all 3 steeples in one shot. The boss fight was the totem. You had to go around the arena to get pumpkins to fire onto the totem. The totem itself had multiple different lasers, enemy spawners, and more. You would have to use the pumpkins and the pumpkin launcher to hit all of the different dangers on each of the levels. Upon doing so, you'd slowly destroy the totem. This boss was very hard, so you had 5 attempts to beat the boss itself. If you were able to defeat the boss, you completed the event. If not, you had to do the entire event again. Unfortunately though, a clip was discovered where you can skip all the steeples and get right inside the boss. Hence, on the final day of the Halloween event, I did a speed run of it in 32 minutes and 54 seconds. Beating all 3 of the steeples, however, awarded you a separate badge which gave the Witch's Brew, an item that increases your speed. Defeating the totem and finishing the event off gave you the Slammo-Lantern, an item which lets out light and increases your passive healing speed. This is the final official JToH mention of Slammo, and with Juke wanting to phase the character out, it is likely it will be the final one as well. 399 people were able to beat all the steeples, which awarded the Witch's Brew. Unfortunately, 51 people were not able to defeat the totem boss, leaving 348 lucky people with the Slammo-Lantern. What's funny as well is that if you did the steeple skip, you did not get the Witch's Brew from it. Thanksgiving was a little bit of a weird event. This was the only event in the game's history that was not placed inside of Ring 1. Instead, this event was located inside of Ring 2, but this event wasn't like the normal conventional event we are used to. Instead, it was a Thanksgiving-themed Ring 2 that featured a challenging tower. Tower of Autumn Harvest to be exact. Because of the event, players had no items inside of Ring 2 at all. So not only did JToH, but every single tower completion in Ring 2 during this event had to be completed with no items at all. Unfortunately though, you can't play this tower at all today. There's no placement for it inside the elevator secret as of now, and there's also no place where it is playable, meaning the only way to experience JToH is the videos that exist of it. Floor 10 of Autumn Harvest was notorious for being painful. In the main area itself, it was very punishing, as the waterfalls that were disguised as pumpkin gravy streams were insanely fast conveyors that ejected you out of the tower. I wonder who's responsible for this. I am not f***ing surprised. Floor 10 had a massive extension to it as well that was really long, but after all that pain, you'd finally get to the Mega Turkey boss fight. This boss fight for some was a little bit of a joke, as there is a deconfirmed tower type that might be coming back, where towers with boss fights at the end were called palaces. So some, definitely not myself, called it Palace of Autumn Harvest. In short, this boss fight required you to move around the arena to be able to press some buttons. On the first level, you had to do an obby to the back, while avoiding projectiles to press a button. On floor 2, you had to move around the perimeter to hit buttons as well. The catch was, the orange and yellow lasers not only hurt you, they were also can collide true as well. At the third and final level, you had disappearing platforms on the side, while you had to dodge projectiles as well. You went on those disappearing platforms onto the final 3 challenges on the sides of the Mega Turkey. Completing all the challenges and hitting the self-destruct button would finish off the Mega Turkey, allowing you to be able to beat the event. In my opinion, it's a shame that you can't play this tower anymore, as it's still to this day one of my favorites. I hope you guys will be able to play this sometime, because I love this tower. 617 people were able to finish off the tower, and the only people to ever do so. Now this sounds pretty low for a challenging tower, because it was. This event was the shortest event in the game's history, only lasting from November 26th at 7 PM EST until December the 3rd. That's only 1 week, and at that time, only very few people had beaten a terrifying tower, and a catastrophic tower wasn't even defeated at this point. In fact, the game was only up to Ring 6, so the amount of people who had even had the skill for TOAH was low. Those who were able to conquer the Mega Turkey received the Spicy Turkey Leg, an item that, upon consuming, would hurt you. However, it would give you a speed boost. Upon looking around, apparently this event was cancelled for some time during April 2019. However, it was revived. A poll was also hosted asking people's opinion about the Thanksgiving event itself. People voted for TOAH to not return for the 2020 Thanksgiving season by a very small margin, but a lot of people wanted a sequel. People also wanted to see an intense tower for next year. However, the Thanksgiving event would never come to light, and since Autumn Harvest is the only Thanksgiving event tower ever made. Finally, for 2019 came the Christmas event. Just like 2018's, there were some presents outside the main area. This time it was a little different compared to normal though. So far, this was the most content we have ever seen in an event, with the 2 presents that were hidden in Ring 1 and Zone 1 also came with a very difficult obby to complete inside of the snowy cabin. If you completed this obby, you got a gift. However, just like in 2018, the presents were able to be bought for Robux, so some just bought the gift for Robux because the obby was too hard for them. The obby was like remorseless after all. However, instead of getting 3 steeples like we are used to, we actually got 4 of them. Granted, the first steeple was like easy or medium difficulty, so therefore it was a piece of cake. But nonetheless, this was the most content we have ever seen in an event up until this point. Upon getting all 4 of the steeples finished, opened up the boss fight area. Just like last Christmas event, we got to see a multiplayer boss this time around. However, what we didn't know was that what we were about to see was a new generation of event bosses. Christmas 2019 introduced the Generation 2 bosses, basically a more fancy version of the Sprite Cranberry mech from 2018. Unfortunately though, these boss fights were infamous for being insanely annoying and very difficult. My personal experience with Dark Laws was abysmal. I attempted it for 4 hours straight until Blocker came in and I was finally able to beat the boss. Koi even reportedly spent 5 hours himself. It was that painfully difficult. The boss fight was supposed to scale up in difficulty depending on how many people were there. But however, the boss was never done to my knowledge solo. However, some speculate that the reason why the boss was so difficult was because failing it had no punishment at all. You didn't have to go do the steeples again, and could just go ahead and give it another go once when you get your friends back. The boss itself detailed avoiding Dark Laws' attacks, while clicking the snow on the ground to get snowballs to hit Dark Laws with. If you died on this boss, you would be temporarily jailed until a specific time. If all people ever got into jail, the boss ended. Like I said, you needed to have friends to help you beat the boss. If people didn't get the steeples done in your server, good luck finding people. Even if you did and wanted to stick together, getting in the same server sucked. There was no join feature at this point, and I believe the block method wasn't discovered yet. So you just had to get lucky just to have one attempt at the boss. After defeating Dark Laws, he would go ahead and take suicide in the totem. Yes, the totem from Halloween. Even though the steeples were easier this time around, Dark Laws made this event a major pain in the ass and is often compared to the Halloween 2019 in difficulty. Oh, and did I mention, this boss would get stuck or just flat out stop working randomly, making this even more enjoyable to play. You would think the 636 people who defeated Dark Laws would get a very good item. Nope. Instead they got this, a plush item that makes sounds. That's it. Other items, however, include the orb that kills you when you use it. I'm sure you can figure out what that does. Double jump potion, enchanted snow globe, which is an item that slows yourself down when you fall, as well as the ugly present, which was an item that you can use to make a platform with. Oh, and last random fact, this was the first time we saw Steve the progress reverting snow globe inside of an event. With the closing of Christmas event for 2019, the 2019 event season ended with the biggest event season of all time. The 2020 event season did not have a spring event this time around, so we start right at Halloween. I mean that literally right away, right on Halloween. The Halloween event for 2020 did not release until October 31st, and no one was ready for what this event had in store. At first, it seemed like a normal event with 3 steeples in it, but that was far from the truth. 2 steeples got into some scuffles. One steeple wasn't Halloween themed at all, and many people saw this steeple as a massive outlier. However, Steeple of Pumpkin Panic also caused a ton of issues. This steeple is a rising lava type, so basically you need to speedrun it. However, its difficulty of peak challenging was severely overshot. This caused the steeple to get tremendous hate in the JToH community, with some going as far to call it the worst steeple of all time. It was very punishing, and remember, you had no items at all, so you couldn't practice the thing. Eventually, the steeple did get put under control, but the damage was done to its reputation. After the event, people's opinions were among the most split I've ever seen in this game's history, with some calling it the best steeple in the event, while some thought it was the worst steeple of all time. Alright, so I was finally able to beat all the steeples. Let's go ahead and open the door and let's go fight the boss. Oh, no, you've got to be kidding me! Yep, that's right. The Dark Laws-like style boss was back. This time it was the Irradiant Guardian. Fortunately, this time it was easier. That being said, it was still insanely difficult. Just like before, you had to simply avoid the boss and not get hit. But getting projectiles was different. There would be a random attack where you could grab arrows on the floor, which you can fire onto the boss itself. However, you had to memorize which attacks the boss does to be able to hit it, because all other attacks, the boss goes everywhere. So pretty much, to even have a chance of beating this boss, you really need to be smart, and even then, it was insanely difficult. Plus, since the attack came at random times, sometimes you would be in drought for arrows, compared to Dark Laws where there was always snow on the ground. Also, like last time, the jail mechanic was brought back. Once again, many people reported spending hours and hours on this boss, and I even did so myself. Just like before in the previous Christmas events, finding people was insanely hard. But this time, fortunately, the JToH team did something for it. A new matchmaking place was made where you can meet up with people to go into the boss. So now, if you're alone, it's way easier to get lobby started to go for the boss. However, there was another way you could pass the boss, and that was the boss rushes. Every so often, Juke would post a 50-player lobby into the boss. Unfortunately though, after the second or third one, Juke prevented the badge from being awarded, so this only worked for some. Ah yes, I have worked so hard on this event. It's time to go and see the thing I 100%ed, and oh my god, what the hell, there is more! 3 steeples and a boss was not enough. Instead, there was another steeple and a citadel. Steeple of Cosmic Terror was intense difficulty, and basically, you had to run away from your own clone to beat the steeple. So basically, a different speedrun steeple. But however, the final part of the puzzle, Citadel of Horrifying Phobias, had not come out with the event itself. The event came out on Halloween Day, and it wasn't even fully finished yet. So for many, we had to sit and wait for what was planned to be a low-mid remorseless citadel. And yes, you heard me right, for the first time ever in an event, there would be a citadel. There hasn't ever been a tower featured before, and well, now we have a citadel. 2 other events, however, did plan to have citadels in them. Christmas 2018 had one known as Citadel of Festive Struggles, and would have been the first citadel ever in the game, because Citadel of Laptop Splitting did not come out until January 17th, 2019. It was originally just delayed to be in Christmas 2019, but was scrapped. Spring had one known as Eastern Easter, but nothing was ever done to it. However, back to the Citadel. Citadel of Horrifying Phobias would finally be released 2 weeks later on November 14th. This Citadel was a story Citadel that was hosted by Lightsynth. Its gimmick and theme was that there were multiple different phobias, one on each floor, and unfortunately, it did not come without its fair share of problems. First of all, this Citadel had so many client objects that people without high-end computers would suffer from lag. In fact, this is the single most part-heavy thing in JToH history. They attempted to fix the lag multiple times, but it wasn't enough to have the masses a fair go. And no matter even how good of a PC you had on floor 6 where you had to avoid the lightning strikes, every time there was a lightning strike, it would simply lag your PC hard. There was a mini boss fight as well after completing a floor that was entirely outside. There was a bug with that boss, which the boss wouldn't start soft-locking you. Obviously this was fixed. The Citadel also featured a Totem Mark II, which was way bigger than the one featured in 2019, and took a while to pass. This fight had to get nerfed multiple times, and people would also get soft-locked at the ending for a while as a bug, but fortunately that was fixed. There were so many bugs and lag issues that you had to not only have a pretty good PC, but the mentality to knock it down. Fortunately though, items were provided this time around. A poll was made where the community could vote on 3 different items that were hidden inside of Steel HP that could be used. The items that were hidden were the Trail Mix, Crystal, and Grass. No matter if you had these items in JToH or not, you could use them. Unfortunately, and I will talk about this later, if you haven't beaten the boss during the event, I believe that you cannot play this Citadel. If you haven't played it or seen it, I highly recommend you watch a video of it, because this is the most ambitious and well-made Citadel in the game's history, and is definitely worth a watch. It even had its own win game. Yes, you heard me right, win game. Upon beating the Citadel, you would actually be teleported to a separate game that had the win area for COHP in it. So for all those of you who annoy the f*** out of Jukeries begging for Citadel win rooms, to you I say, checkmate. Despite it being the Halloween event, the doors would not close until December the 1st, meaning that only for one day the Halloween event wasn't Halloween. Despite all the issues the event had, it was overall very well respected and featured the most content in any event to date. 4 steeples and a Citadel. For Halloween 2020, no items were awarded until you defeated the Irradiant Guardian. There was no award just for beating all 3 of the steeples. 2,761 defeated the Irradiant Guardian, receiving the Basket of Treats and Mystery Potion. The Basket of Treats perk was kept a secret, but it was found that the candy projectiles it let out would destroy turret blocks, but no one uses it. You can use it though in TOGF's Floor 8 Bullet Hell. The Mystery Potion was a healing item, but it had a chance to hurt you instead. 1,548 people were able to finish Steeple of Cosmic Terror, which gave the Cursed Coil. This is the second best previously obtainable coil, as it is the same jump power as the Ghost Coil from 2018. However, it had a catch. It would hurt you very badly upon using it, but in a laggy server, it barely hurts, meaning Ghost Coil sits on top still. Remember how the Ghost Coil though temporary wasn't part of the boost barrier? Same story as the Cursed Coil, but this time the damage was much worse because there were much harder towers in the game. A notice was even put that if you were caught, you would be kicked. 750 people exactly had the hardware and guts to finish off the low-mid remorseless citadel and were awarded with the fragmented helmet, an item that using it the first time would instantly heal you to max health, but the next two uses would only help you a little bit. Finally, we arrive at Christmas 2020, the last event so far. Fortunately, unlike the Halloween event, it did not actually release on Christmas Day. Instead, it was released... only 2 days before Christmas. Well, this time, however, there were no major problems with the steeples themselves. Obviously, other than that one bad apple the community will always hate on no matter what. But, just like Halloween, the event wasn't fully finished on release. We of course, like the last 2 years, got the extra content outside of the event itself, like the hidden presents, but the main area itself only had the 3 steeples. A 4th tower was being worked on, and the boss wasn't yet finished. However, the JToH community was assured that the tower would be released in a day or 2. Alright, looking good. So when did the tower actually release? So, it wasn't released until 8 days later. In 2021, of course! Just like any other release, the tower had problems. First of all, in its original state, it was considered challenging, so they had to nerf it. By I would say very small margin. In terms of bugs, there were actually only 2. The rumble tracks would sometimes like to lose their mind, which was fine 99% of the time as you wouldn't fall to it, but there was a catastrophic bug. Floor 10 of the tower featured a boss. You had to collect snow on the ground and launch the snowballs with the launcher and knock out the chains on the side twice to beat the boss. However, there was a simple little problem. The launcher didn't fire randomly, so pretty much you were GBJ'd and had to try again. But other than that, the tower itself didn't have many issues at all. Okay, so far so good. But what about the boss? Not so well. The boss took so long to release, in fact, that Zone 4 came out first. Zone 4 released on January 17th. Hot Chocolate Fury came out on January 4th, almost 2 weeks later. The event had been open for 3.5 weeks at that point. The boss would not open up until January 24th, a whole month since the event started. Just like the past 2 bosses, it was also a multiplayer boss. At this point, the last non-multiplayer event boss was Halloween 2019. Fortunately as well, the boss matchmaking place was back. Alrighty, let's now talk about the boss itself, and bear with me here, because this is insanely hard for me to explain. Before you ask, yes, this is like the Dark Laws and Radiant Guardian bosses. Okay, so in order to attack the bosses, you had a sword, which you could use for melee combat. However, it also had a charge attack feature. If you held R, you would be able to charge your sword in order for it to have projectiles that you could shoot out with your sword. Now onto the boss itself. The thing is, as you can see in the footage below, it wasn't a boss. It was 2 bosses. There was a cleric and a knight. The cleric would be on the corners of the arena, and the knight would be inside the actual arena and was the main obstacle for the boss itself. They each have different health bars and different quantities of health. The catch is, however, whoever you kill in Phase 1, the opposite will be supercharged and fight you in Phase 2. So for example, if I kill the cleric, I will have the knight in Phase 2 to worry about. After then you defeat the supercharged version of the boss of your choice, you would then be able to defeat the boss. Now, if you killed both at the same time, a secret Phase 2 would occur, where both of them would be supercharged. If you defeat this, you get a special prize in the form of a special trail. But however, you can get this even after the event, and you can do it today. However, to make Phase 2 as optimal as possible, you'd want to get both bosses low in health, and kill whatever boss you don't want in Phase 2. Of course as well, the jail system was implemented into the boss as well. Okay, those observant might have seen a problem with the boss's mechanic. Did you hear it? If you guessed that it was a fight on who gets killed, you would be correct. Because the meta was to get both bosses low. All it took was one person to ruin the plan if you wanted it or not. This was a common problem I saw people complaining about. However, there was a situation where this problem was even worse. The problem was the bouncing between the two different phase 2s were insanely off. On release, the cleric was so powerful that it was practically impossible, so people opted for the knight. However, Juke went ahead and nerfed the cleric to where it was the optimal one to go for. So there was a battle between well-informed community members and those who don't understand what they were doing. Oh, and did I mention, even with all of this, the boss was actually really hard. In my opinion, this was the hardest event boss of all time. There was also a bug where those in jail when the boss was defeated were not sent to the arena as well, meaning for a short time, you had to be there to kill the boss to get the present. This boss was so insanely difficult, but due to that, Juke kept the event available until February 21st, 2021. The event lasted 50 days, making it the longest event in JToH history. However, despite this boss's difficulty, 2,798 would get the Heart of the Frosted, which is an item that is basically horizontal mobility. Other items for Christmas 2020 include the Admin Blade, which is a sword that hurts you, and the Christmas Launcher, an item that temporarily disables normal kill bricks. That's finally the end of the history segment. If you're watching this when it comes out, at around this time, it is pretty likely that the JToH team is soon starting to work up on the Halloween event for this year. While it may seem weird that we are talking about Halloween in August, these events take a ton of work. I mean, it took a whole month after release for Christmas to finally get finished, and that was just a tower and a boss. So I'm going to try the best I can to try and come up with ways to make this event season go a little better. Last year, we saw events that barely got released on time, and the Christmas event was almost open for 2 months. So clearly to many inside the JToH community, the events need a change. There is no denying, however, that events take a ton of work. In a way, it's like working on a mini area of JToH, but worse. A brand new lobby needs to be made, but unlike normal, the JToH team has to make their own steeples for it, so they need to hire builders for the events. Then we also need a boss to be made. So what does all of this work lead to? Well, you get an event that is open for around a month, then after a couple days or weeks, the event is put into the elevator secret. When I was recording footage inside the events for the elevator secrets, I saw one person in Halloween 2020 and a couple in Christmas 2020 for the monthly challenge. That's it. The old events are pretty much neglected and barely see anybody who decides to play them. There are no awards. You can just play them for fun. So these old events have all this work put into them, so they can just sit and rot in the elevator secret where very few people care. So unfortunately, this does mean events do have some fragments of their history in them. The 2018 events have the very old menu in them, and in the Halloween event there's even the old JToH timer. Now this would be fine, but both 2018 events and Spring 2019 have no possible way of returning to the lobby, so you have to rejoin the game while you're in there. Halloween 2018 doesn't even work correctly. When you die, it doesn't teleport you back to Ring 1 like it should. I don't know if when you hit 20 minutes if you're teleported back or not. I don't have the time to test it, but I'm sure somebody will try to figure that out for me. However, there is one bug that I'm not sure of that is fixed, or not to this day, that's kind of important. If this is true, this is a pretty bad oversight that needs to be fixed. In Halloween 2020, SOCT and COHP are on the second floor of the mansion. However, there is a blockade blocking you from entering floor 2 until you enter the boss. But there's a problem. Apparently the way this door opens is it checks to see if you have the badge from the boss, and if you do, you can go in. The problem is, you can only get the boss badge during the event, meaning if you didn't do the boss during the event, if this is true, it's impossible to get on the second floor to play Citadel of Horrifying Phobias. I will put an update in a pinned comment once when I figure out what happened there. Not like trying to find people trying to beat the Arena Guarding, however, is a problem in of itself if you're trying to even unlock it anyway. Plus, I don't even know if the clip in Halloween 2019, which skips all 3 of the steeples, is even patched. So I propose that there should be ways to have these events have some sort of content put into them. And one way that could be great to try and have people play old events in the elevator secret is implementation into the monthly challenges. This is something that has actually already been done. For the Pred challenge for the August challenges, you can actually beat Hot Chocolate Fury for it. So this is something that the JToH team is clearly interested in. However, I was mainly thinking for an advanced challenge like beat Steeple of Midnight Terrors in Halloween 2019. Another idea is giving some sort of award for beating the events if you didn't do it when events were actually out. I am not someone who is good at thinking ideas for this department of things, but maybe like a simple aura, or maybe stuff in events can count for difficulty requirements for the rings in events that have a difficulty chart, and that sort of thing. But now let's actually talk about trying to fix the events themselves. There are some very common criticisms that I'm sure all of us heard over and over again talking about events. As the years went by, every event slowly got more and more ambitious as standards in JToH rose. In a way, this got to a bullying point for JToH players in 2020. Another common criticism is the bosses themselves. These boss fights are very long, so even though if you watch a video and think it's not hard, making a mess up halfway through could easily waste 10 to 15 minutes. Then you have to regroup and try again. I did mention that when you failed the Christmas 2020 boss, you had to walk a very long distance back to the boss area when you failed. It is clear events need to be less ambitious. This means scaling back on the number of steeples, as well as not spending too much time on a complicated boss battle. Finally, the bosses need to be changed. These bosses are commonly criticized for being too hard, and wait a minute, past Logan ISL is trying to remind me that Juke had DM'd me saying that if I had any questions that I could ask her, and that the 2021 events will be less ambitious and will include bosses not worked on by Juke. So I pretty much spent all this work for nothing? If you're somebody who doesn't like the ambitious and complex boss fights, I have good news. This is a criticism that seems to be addressed and will be covered for the 2021 event season. She states a different approach will be made, and that they'll be a lot less ambitious, and that the bosses will be less complex, and worked on by someone else other than herself, so she can focus on the Guardians. I thank you a lot, Juke, for coming out and reaching out to me to actually address this issue. Juke said she wouldn't be bothered if I asked her too much, but I really had one question I think that needed addressed. I asked Juke if we were simply going back to the 3 steeples in the boss fight formula, and well, she replied. She stated that we wouldn't be going back to the exact old formula, just toning down the complexity of the event. She specifically said that it's highly unlikely that we will be going back to the 3 steeples 1 boss, due to it feeling repetitive. I asked Juke what she specifically meant with toning down the complexity, and asked her if she meant that the steeples would have simpler mechanics, rather than, in like Christmas, us seeing some of the V6 kit introductions. Unfortunately, Juke did not respond to this question. This is where I unfortunately can't help anymore. It is clear that the 2021 event season is going to be a new generation of events, and I do speculate that simply we will see something close to Christmas 2020 just toned down for this year. But let's try to think outside the box as best as we can. I just realized that this has turned to a my opinions and predictions video, but now we're going back to our scheduled program. If we take a look at the 2020 events, both of them had something in common. Their non-steeples took a lot of time to release. Hot Chocolate Fury and Horrifying Phobias took a while to come out after the initial event. So let's talk about not including towers or citadels for this year's event. Instead of trying to build a tower or citadel, make steeples instead. For this year, maybe we want to see 5 steeples in the event. The tower and citadel is what took so long in 2020. So this could be an option that we could see on the table for this year's event. This would definitely give the event a unique identity without pushing it too far over the top either. Next, the bosses. I didn't dare ask Juke any questions about the 2021 boss, as I knew she wouldn't be able to answer that question. But I think we have a 3rd generation of bosses that are imminent. Considering Juke is working on the Guardians, I think the game is going to have some bosses that are like the bosses we saw in 2020, in the palaces for the Guardians. I think the game is going to have some bosses that are like bosses that we saw in 2020, but nonetheless, I am going to ask you guys, would you rather see a toned down version of the bosses in 2020 and Dark Laws, or do we go back to the days of the Totem? I would highly recommend you give the Totem Mark 1 a go, as I'm sure 99.9% of you haven't seen a video of it before. This boss was very successful, but it isn't as complex either. But it seems the main downfall with the new generation of bosses were their difficulty and complexity, which Juke addressed is being fixed. So it's really a matter of personal preference, really. While I know I am mainly focusing on the Halloween event rather than Christmas for these examples, which also needs to be worked on soon. Typically the Christmas events are a lot like the Halloween ones, but they can base Christmas off of whatever they do for Halloween, so I'm just focusing on Halloween. But there is something I noticed when Juke talked to me. Juke said that they haven't considered going back to the old formula. I wonder if the event work hasn't even started yet. Considering ideally the event should release in 2 months and around 1 to 2 weeks after, it is clear they probably want to start going now. But here's the thing, these events take a ton of game development resources. In 4 months, essentially too many areas will have to be made just to simply, in a way, be tossed into the bin. In that time, we could have seen another permanent area in the game. The 2018 event season did not mess around with the game much, so I am not going to include it. But if 2019, 2020, and 2021 didn't have events, and a full area came out during that time, we could be at Zone 7 or Zone 6 in World 3's first area. This is a lot of content we have missed out on, and is likely Zone 7 won't be coming until early 2023 or late 2022. That's how bad the events can waste time, and all of that work just sits barely being touched. It is a matter of personal morals and what you believe, but maybe getting rid of events is a better idea for the game. Again, this is your own personal morals and preferences, and everyone's going to feel very different on this one. It's a matter of what you want, permanent content or temporary content in JToH. Unfortunately though, that's really all I have. It was very cool that Juke popped up and addressed some issues, but I couldn't be as imaginative as normal as some decisions have already been made. Special thanks to Adamir for the thumbnail and graphics, as well as Chloe for the Dark Laws footage. So now, I did my work. Now I ask what you think. Thank you all very much for watching. However, as always, the form link in the description is available, or I am spamming it in the Premiere chat if you're watching this then. There, you can go ahead and vote on the multiple different ideas with a yes or no fashion, and in a couple weeks I'll go ahead and reveal the results. As always, thanks for the immense support for this series, and I will see you all next time. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Bye bye.